Christina Lanham here with me as well. She's a little further away from the phone at the moment, so you'll hear from her really quick. But we're going to get started here with our showcase webinar for June. Very odd topic if you look historically at our webinars, but we're going to go over technology and e-learning. So we were really hoping to attract some nerds today because Christina and I are pretty nerdy, and we really enjoy technology and e-learning. And at ITI, we have an awesome opportunity to use technology, obviously, and different methods of training our clients, but also internally, we do a lot of training, obviously, as well. So we're going to get into that sort of stuff today, and a little bit of background about our company. And I told Jonah usually does introductions, our marketing manager, for Mike when he actually does lessons on our showcase webinar, but we certainly don't require an introduction, not because we're really well known, but more so because we don't deserve one. So I'm our vice president, and Christina is our manager of e-learning, so a lot of what you're going to hear is just our actual knowledge that we've gained here at ITI and serving customers. But ITI is a world leader in crane and rigging training, really educational services throughout. We do a lot of on-site work at customer locations. This video is really neat. We just had it done. It's going over the courses that we do at our training centers as well as on-site and then e-learning. So we're going to jump right into it, and I really am excited to use some of the technology actually in our presentation. So what I'd like to encourage you all to do is open up you should have this window, the GoToWebinar viewer open that you're seeing my screen on. And then if you could, open up your browser and go to this URL. It's polev.com/ITI1. I know I'm putting you to work, but this is going to be really a big part of our webinar today. So I'm going to pause here for 1 second so you can do that. But again, open up a new browser window, and you'll want to kind of get your screen set up so you have the window of my screen, on one side of your screen, and then you want your browser next door to it. So just like this picture shows, you're going to have two screens open, and again, the URL is polev.com/ITI1. Okay. So if you have that open, we're going to be using polling software, obviously, we wanted to show you guys this. So we're going to jump into oh, that's cool. Obviously, the polling software is working well. Someone said, say what already? But we want to ask you a question about your organization. So what are some challenges your organization faces in training its employees? Oh, wow. That's a quick answer. What's neat about this software, in short, you can actually, obviously, text an answer in, but also I sent you to that URL so that you can respond through your computer. So again, I'm asking, and this is what we're looking for some responses, what are some challenges your company faces in training its employees? We have money, no formal process, that's one we hear quite a bit. Experienced people, good. The initial education level of the employees, okay. Cutting into production time, that's a big one. Opportunity costs, right? Getting employees off the floor, it makes sense. Getting people away from their jobs, right? So budget time away from normal work. Getting management to understand e-learning can be beneficial. Not everything needs to be a live class. Great point, and we'll get into that shortly. So we wanted to get your feedback and just show you how this polling software works, but we're going to kind of go over three major challenges today, and you guys touched on several of them. One of which, the big one, is really timing. When people talk about time away from the floor or away from work, away from their typical job, that's a major issue. I didn't hear anyone say turnover or tribal knowledge, which is okay. I'm sure you guys refer to those terms maybe in different terms, but we're going to go over those. So you might be wondering why the ever so handsome Kevin Costner is on the screen and Dances with Wolves. We found that these three challenges, this is hilarious, guys, by the way. Christina hates Kevin Costner. But so the reason Kevin Costner's on the screen is Dances with Wolves, and his character really exemplifies these three issues that organizations face really well. If you think about it, his name was, remember, Lieutenant John Dunbar. He was exiled, basically, to a remote Civil War outpost. He was on the Union Army, and he learned the ways of the local Sioux tribe, Indian tribe, or native tribe. The Sioux, they don't have a documented language, so they have nothing but what we call tribal knowledge, right? They didn't have any documented language, no documented history, no written knowledge to speak of, really. They had some drawings and they had artifacts, but everything that they taught Lieutenant John Dunbar was through the spoken word. So interestingly, one complication to that is he might learn from this person, or this person about the same event, and John might have heard three different stories based on that event from who's telling the story. So in addition to tribal knowledge, the Union Army obviously experienced some turnover with Lieutenant Dunbar, because he actually left his post shortly into the movie, and he converted, if you will, to the Sioux tribe. So he left the Union Army. The Union Army experienced some turnover. And then timing. This is obviously less important with Dance with Wolves, but the character basically learned throughout several seasons, right? The movie goes on, and he becomes really a native, a part of their tribe, and it took quite a while, right, to become that. He wasn't, with no documented information, he had to learn over time through several meetings, through a lot of discussion and all spoken word. So it was very slow with very little structure, okay? We're going to go into those three challenges here shortly. One thing I want to disclaim really quick, we're going to be talking about those three challenges, but we also are going to talk about, sorry, my technology is failing me right now. Let's see here. There we go. We're going to talk about technology and what it can do to help us, but Jim Collins points out a great fact in Good to Great. He talks about the fact that technology is never the catalyst. It's never going to put you over the edge or make you successful. Technology is just a application that great companies utilize carefully to move their organizations from good to great. Okay, and that's kind of the hedgehog concept here. If you've never read this book, it's great. But again, this is a disclaimer against technology. We're going to talk about how you can apply them to your business a little bit, especially when it comes to training. So looking at tribal knowledge, before we get into our next poll question, Six Sigma defines it as knowledge known that is not documented. Okay, that's pretty much the most basic definition. A tribe is a company in a business sense, and a lot of times the information lacks data. It's usually a derogatory term because it's indicative of a poor learning structure, and it's the telephone game, right? So you can learn quite a bit about it in Six Sigma's websites and whatnot. But what I want to know before we get into the technology piece, what sort of tribal knowledge, so going back to your polling window, what sort of tribal knowledge is taught in your organization? Okay, so what sort of messages or information is sent tribally that's not documented? And maybe as well, what are the negative effects? So safety, that's a good one. People have general safety comments here and there that might not be best practices or whatnot. Rigging methods, bad habits passed on, when it's okay or not to bend the rules, that's a good point. So tribal knowledge, speaking of this, has anyone ever heard the comment, you know, this is just always the way we've done it, right? Or I don't need training, I've been doing this for 30 years. That's sort of a tribally type of comment because it's speaking of the fact that it might not be documented how we're supposed to do this or approved by somebody, but it's just the methodology we use. So groupthink is a negative effect. Great point. If everyone thinks so, and that's the validation for the idea, then that's really not a good validation, but groupthink is a major problem in communication. So good. Let's jump into, before we get into the technology we're going to talk to you about, you guys, I want to make sure you understand and close off on tribal knowledge, but it's not all bad. That's not what we're saying. think the point is that good applications include apprenticeship programs where you have to learn tactile skills with practice and mentoring, which is really more of a tribal approach to learning something. However, as everyone knows, most apprenticeship programs are initiated by documented training, right? Whether it's a 4-week program for a welder or electrician or whatnot, and then as you go into an apprenticeship, you work under a journeyman, you learn the tactile skills, and you get that mentoring. So what we're going to show you very quickly, what Christina is going to show you, is how to capture knowledge, and that's essential because it needs to be understood and approved by the company, and then it also has to be reused systematically. We also want it to be editable and amended later on, okay? So the next one we're going to chat about is turnover. This is the second T, like the Union Army lost John Dunbar. Everyone really, I'm sure everyone understands what turnover means. It's just the percentage of people lost in a given year, basically. And the bottom part of the equation, you're averaging out the number of positions that have lost or gained in the company. Okay, so for example, if a company had 9 staff resign and 2 new hires, there was 33 staff members, and so on. It's a 25% turnover rate. Okay, we wanted to show you this. Obviously turnover is expensive. There's a ton of different costs associated. Center for American Progress had a good report on the cost of replacing people, and they basically found that 20% of a person's annual, whoops, I clicked the link there. Sorry about that. 20% of a person's annual salary is about the average cost of replacement. Okay, so that's the general takeaway from this slide. And we're showing you that. Obviously, we're not going to talk about how to end turnover, but before we go on, let's chat. What's your department or organization's average turnover rate over the past 5 years? Okay, so again, in your poll everything window, you can select one of the buttons there, or you can text a code. You text one of those codes to 37607 to give the answer. We have quite a bit of, I think we have about 50 people on the line, but we're having some issues maybe getting the information in. But the idea is what we really want to talk about, the training costs associated. That's one thing that we feel technology can help. We're not going to talk about how to solve the variety of factors. What we're really interested in is the lost training dollars and training up new employees. So the technology we're going to show you will speak to how to basically lower your incremental training costs, as well as the other idea that a lot of our customers use is tuition reimbursement programs, which isn't technology related. Okay. So lastly, most of the issues you guys did mention in the initial poll was regarding challenges regarding timing. So this is one item we typically use regarding timing. It's the true cost of training, and the great point is over 80%, or usually like 85% if you think about it. These costs are a wash typically. But the major cost associated with any training event is the lost production and lost wages. So if you take away these items, which are a wash, depending on no matter who you use for your training, whether it's internally, externally, 85% is usually makes up the cost, is usually lost production, lost wages of the overall training. If you pay an external vendor, the fee paid to them usually represents between 5 and 15% of the overall cost. Okay, so major issue here, obviously, as well regarding timing is scheduling of a large number of people is super difficult. We're talking to a major crane rental house throughout the world about training up 800 people in Master Rigger, in our Master Rigger course. So imagine it's a 4-day event. That's a lot. That's 3,200 days of training that's brand new, right? So we're working with this company on how to do that. What they might be doing is utilizing a lot of e-learning to cover all the theory, right? So if they can cut this down to maybe 1 day of practical or instructor-led stuff, that can reduce quite a bit of the timing cost or timing challenge, okay? So what sort of timing of training issues does your organization currently experience? Do you have, well, people mentioned getting people off the floor earlier, getting people, availability is important. Lack of instructor volunteers, that's an interesting one. And one thing we would be doing, guys, if we were doing this in person, is obviously elaborating on these comments, but instructor volunteers is awesome. A lot of times companies don't have competent or enough instructors internally to do the training. Class sizes, workload, night shift employees, that's a timing issue. Even vendor timing, I'm supposing that's what that means. So shift differences, even unexpected issues, that might be like production issues or things like that. Okay, great comments. I want to make sure, again, there's more challenges than just these regarding training our people, but these were the ones we wanted to focus on. So what we want to do is actually take you to another approach really quick, and I just gave away the next slide, but if you think about how you learned growing up, the Prussian model is how education has been for almost 250 years. The Prussian model is how we all learned, in third grade pretty much. It's where we had an instructor in front of the class, and we had all of the students just listened by, and the instructor lectured, the teacher lectured, and then we went home and did homework. The other major thing was it's a lockstep or batch learning process. We all stayed in the same grade, and we all moved on together. So if there were people that fell behind or people that went forward, it didn't really matter. People were held back at times, but one thing it certainly stifled was you weren't able to move forward very often. Not many schools offered the ability for people to do that. So you can take this and think about how you're applying training to your organization. Usually organizations still follow the same methodology with instructor-led training that's very, very similar to this, okay? We want to show you a couple resources that are really up and coming in the education world. The Khan Academy, we should have had a poll question, if you have heard of Khan Academy before. Sal Khan is the founder, and man, he's an incredible guy. He's got 3 or 4 degrees from Harvard and MIT and so on. I know he's an engineer, several other things, and he actually just started lecturing his niece from distance, right? She lived in New Orleans, he lived in Boston, I think, at the time, and he basically started recording a bunch of videos on YouTube, and he made them public so anybody could do it, but his niece was like in 4th grade or something, and he was able to lecture her. She was slipping back behind in math, okay? So what he's eventually created is this idea of a flipped classroom, and I'm going to show you that soon. Here's Sal talking with Bill Gates at a TED Talk. You can go watch this on TED.com, I think. So what really the model looks like, he uses a term called mastery learning. It's all self-paced access for your lectures. So lectures are done at home, and the homework is done in the classroom. Okay, so you're collaborating with students. You're doing interactive assignments and whatnot with teachers and students. And at home, when you're in typical homework time, instead, you're actually watching the theoretical lectures, which makes perfect sense because it's just one-way communication. Why would we be wasting everyone's time in a class with one-way communication unless massive discussion is needed, right? So this book, if anyone's really interested, I recommend reading this book. I've read it. It's awesome. It kind of is his treatise, if you will, on his flipped classroom model. And what's really easy to understand is if we compare it to the traditional model, like we talked about the Prussian model, we have instructor-led training. That's really all it is involved, which means you get one view, you get one shot. If you miss that day on differential calculus, good luck reading it in the book and understanding it. If you miss, it's usually a one-time view of the lecture. It's because it is live and it is in class, okay? Problem solving is all at home, typically independent without a mentor. If parents are involved or older siblings usually, that was different, but think about just training at your organization, that's usually not the case. It's usually all in classroom and whatnot. Class speed, again, is predetermined, lockstep, one speed fits all. Okay, teacher's role is a lecturer and a manager, and what really happens, he talks about this phenomenon called Swiss cheese learning, and what it's sort of like is they got this, if I'm studying geometry and I get Pythagorean theorem under my belt really well, but I miss a week because I go on vacation, and so I miss the next subject, which maybe it's using cosine and tangent, you know. I make the next 4 weeks, and I really get harmed by missing this key week. So I never really get fully caught up. In 3-4 years when I'm into calculus, and I haven't mastered this subject, it will really hurt me downstream. It usually won't hurt me or reflect really well on one test, you know. But the flipped classroom, like I talked about, as opposed to Swiss cheese learning, is mastery learning. And he uses a model where a lot of access is available online for people to test their knowledge constantly, and refresher trainings available. But you constantly test your knowledge, and every 3 to 6 months, for instance, on one subject, you have to answer 10 questions in a row correctly to have that subject approved or checked off. It's a great idea, right? Why don't we do that? Other ideas and elements of the flipped classroom we've already talked about. VILT is a term for virtual instructor-led training. That usually indicates it's live, but from a distance. On demand is usually instructor-led as well, or it can be through computer or flash or something like that, HTML5, but it's on demand, which means it's recorded, okay? So what both of those technologies do, you can record both of them, right? So you get unlimited views, it's online and on demand, and you can do it at home. So the typical, what Khan's doing with this model is lectures, again, are at home. The classroom time, just think about if you're doing rigging training, wouldn't it be great to have the people in the class have learned all the theory on their own time or at home or during different hours when it's easier for them and able for them to learn. Then when they're in the class, they're able to collaborate and do critical lift plans and work out problems. And then they get to work with their teacher and mentors. That's the other thing that's really lost here, guys. There's some students that are on one subject matter, might be really, really good. And on that same subject, you got 2 or 3 students that are not so good. Always doing problem solving in class certainly helps the mentoring program, and people typically will learn better from their peers during problem solving than they will from one-way communication, okay? Class speed is supply and demand, so people can test out of things. They can advance if they want, as well if they need more work, because the instructor lectures are on demand, they can go back and review, okay? And I'm speeding through this. These slides will be available later on, so you guys can go back and review. What we're really, before we get into the demos here, what we're trying to resolve, like we said, are just a couple major training challenges, like tribal knowledge, timing, and turnover. Hands-on practical training, we want to make sure we state this will never go away. It certainly is needed for tactile skill development, right? Like rigging or like critical lift planning. You can't read a book and know how to develop critical lift plans because you've never seen a crane, you don't know what a shackle is. That's not possible. However, technology, what we're going to show you, is enabling you to accomplish more online. So what I'm going to do is brief the first thing, and this one really addresses tribal knowledge, okay? So Christina's going to give us a demo. I'm going to turn it over to her in 1 second. This is a software we use as a company internally. We also use it externally. So if you've heard of we have a fundamentals of rigging engineering program, and it's a one-of-a-kind program. It's over 300 hours of content from the top engineers in the world on rigging engineering. We're recording all of those lectures, and it's actually going to be fully on demand. So this software, Panopto, enables you to record lectures. It's basically an internal YouTube channel. And the rule that Christina is going to show you, we actually abide by this in-house. It's called the video rule. If a message, and a message is anything, remember Communications 101, a message is any sort of training or any communication you need to make. If it meets these 3 requirements, we're going to record a video. We're not going to hold a meeting, okay? So if the message needs to be repeated to other people, or it can be expected that it will have to be repeated to other people in the future, it's predominantly one way, which means we're not talking about a discussion or a collaborative effort here. We're talking about one-way communication that's really a lesson message. And then if it's over 2 minutes in length, record a video. Okay, and you guys will see why. So this is a way to get rid of, well, to really capture your tribal knowledge. I apologize, not get rid of it. So I'm going to turn over the screen to Christina so she can give you a basic overview of Panopto. Okay.
Hi, everybody. So on my screen here, you can see our internal Panopto account. And what we've done is we've made a number of different folders for these different videos Zach was talking about. One of the things that really led us to this was when we hire new people on board, it's how do we get them indoctrinated to all of ITI's culture and how all of our different divisions and departments work together. And so what we did was we created a number of videos on all these different subjects, which allows them to, new employees, to watch them and then come back to us with questions. So our time spent working with them as they onboard is more productive. One example is over here is just our welcome, and I muted these, so don't worry if you don't hear any sound, but here is Zach just kind of giving an overview to our new employee training manual, and as you go through it, let's see here, just let it load up a second. Here you can see the schedule, and he's able to annotate on here and point out different things that they need to be looking for in their physical manual that they have.
And you really should shave before you do recordings, just as a thought. That was a great still shot there, but sorry, go ahead.
So, and then in addition, we've also worked on making videos that we can use for clients. And so in this instance, here's our CEO, Mike Purnell, and he's doing a video, and this is overviewing a crane and rigging manual and going over the section on slings and pointing out specific sections in there that people should look at and expounding on that information, why this section is important, things they need to think about as they're looking at this manual and applying it to their job.
Yeah, great point. And like I mentioned, for instance, this format is going to be used in our entire rigging engineering program. And the trade-off, guys, is the old model, like when e-learning really first started, a lot of people thought you needed to create flashy, well, Flash and HTML5, and that's new, language, but it's really not that necessary. What we're showing here, and I'll flip it back, or if you flip it back to my screen, what we're really trying to show you is your organization will have a lot of SMEs. So if you're a training manager, for instance, for all of your people, you will probably, I'm guessing, have a lot of internal tribal knowledge that is not captured anywhere. And nobody is advocating the idea that you'll have to, my gosh, you don't want to write a procedure manual that contains everybody's tribal knowledge in the company. However, there are certain procedures and different things you do need to capture, and one of the best ways to do that is through lecture recordings. I released this poll here: how does your organization currently capture and document tribal knowledge from your SMEs? But more on that is Panopto is a great way to do that. There's other software out there called like Tegrity, or obviously you could actually just use YouTube. You can, or GoToMeeting. You can record those at any time, and you just really want to create an environment where people can review them, right? So new employee guides, SOPs is obviously a big one. A lot of written language or written documentation is certainly used. How do you currently capture tribal knowledge? Instructor evaluations, okay, word of mouth is stated. A lot of people, yeah, we don't. That was sort of the answer we were expecting. I think the point is you want to be able to capture it, and then you want a good user interface to disseminate it, right? And that's what we're going to talk about now, is a learning management system. Most organizations have one of these in place. We're going to show you what we do and how we utilize it internally and externally. But it's one thing to capture all the knowledge. It's another thing to have the wherewithal to set up okay, new employee, you need to go through these 5 lessons, and then at your 1-year anniversary, you need to go through these. We have a new course issue came up that we want to issue everyone to take this course by July 31st. So an LMS is a learning management system. A lot of people use it for new employee onboarding as well as refresher training and technical knowledge training. So it allows a documented, planned learning path and progress tracking, obviously, as well. So I'm going to turn it back over to Christina and show you how we use ours. Ours is called Absorb LMS. And let me switch the screens here. Take it away, Christina. So she's logging in now, I think.
Thanks, Zach. So here's our LMS system. And currently I'm logged in as John Smith. And the way we have it set up is we have an easy-to-use dashboard. He can easily see where his courses are. From up here, we do have a menu so he can navigate to different parts of the LMS. But if we click just on My Courses, what it's going to do is it's going to break up into a couple of different sections for how we have it set up. In e-learning, we have all of our technical training and theory for rigging. So we can go in here and then open up our basic rigger course. And John Smith can see he's got 47 days to finish this course. And he's already gone through the introduction, so it's checked it off that he's completed it. And he can just go to the next piece and open it up and start working through that section.
And I might add these, we obviously have built in these, this is using Flash, so we had some e-learning items built for certain courses like these rigging ones. I think, Christina, would you mind showing them some courses built that you can open up, for instance, to Panopto?
Yes. So if we navigate back over to our courses, I have over here our new hire onboarding like I was telling you about earlier. And we've actually built this out into a number of weeks. And so we have specific videos where we can launch, and it's going to open up into Panopto to play that video on that subject matter so they can go through and watch it, and it's easily categorized in our LMS and helps them track to see which ones they viewed.
Yeah, great point there. And I love how, wow, we were pretty intelligent to put this way, but we thought a lot about this, and we're using Microsoft Journal Notes there. So the student has a workbook that we created in Microsoft Word, and then I've imported it there into Journal Notes, which allows me to annotate over the top of it and fill it in as I'm speaking. So the idea again was, okay, a new hire. We opened up an Edmonton branch just a month ago, and we have 2 new hires up there. They're going to go through all of this training on their own time, basically not on their own time, but I'm saying away from time where we should be meeting as a team, right? So individual work time, they're able to go into this lesson, watch it, and take their notes on their workbook, and then meet with me or somebody else about that subject and ask any questions they want, collaborate, and learn and move forward on the next subject. So we have an immense amount of resources on here, and we're still always building this out. This is a never-ending, for anybody in the training management industry, which a lot of you are. I saw the list of people that were attending. That's the case. So thank you, Christina. I'm going to bring it back. If you throw it back to my screen, we're going to wrap up here.
All right.
Major thing, you guys, I wanted to ask, actually the next poll question, if you saw it already, was if your organization currently has an LMS in place. And let me see if I can go to the next screen here. A lot of people had answered. Does your organization currently have an online LMS in place? Yes or no? Yes, yes. So that's a good one to ask. And what's really difficult about a lot of these items are, for instance, this is a corporate-wide thing. So if you work for a very large organization, these sort of decisions are made very near the top and are hard to influence sometimes. Smaller organizations can certainly be a little more nimble. But anyhow, a sort of online environment for learning is almost necessary. I'm sure if you look at the Fortune 500, I would imagine over 80% of them do. The last thing we wanted to just talk about briefly, because we used a lot of this stuff during the talk today, there's a lot of ways to enhance instructor-led training, ILT. And actually, it's not just ILT. Like I said, VILT is instructor-led training, but it's virtual. But all of our instructors, when we're out on site or even in our training centers, they use tablet PCs. That's what I'm using today. It's a tablet where I can annotate and say hello to all you. I can draw smiley faces. Annotation, we couldn't find any metrics on this, but it's a gut feeling, I got to say. I'll find some studies, or we will go study it ourselves, but we're very, very sure annotation increases retention incredibly. When you're able to draw on a screen like this, these two screenshots right here are showing Mike during a webinar, one of our instructors, go through a couple of lessons, and when you're able to draw stuff out, it's just like you're sitting next to somebody, and technology allows or enables this to happen. Today we were using PowerPoint with Poll Everywhere. So Poll Everywhere was a pretty neat software. I'm doing a talk up at one of a large construction organization here next month, and they're going to have about 300 of their safety advisors. It's their annual safety meeting, and we're going to use Poll Everywhere. And they all get to use their cell phones, to basically submit and text message their answers so it shows up on the screen. It's a great way to get anonymous feedback. Obviously, anytime we'll certainly want to have open conversations and not, we don't want people just using their phone and technology and not speaking, but it does have its place, right? Prezi is certainly gaining market share as well. I'm sure many of you have heard of Prezi as a presentation tool. It's a very, very interactive, engaging way to present a static topic because you kind of fly through the screen. There's actually like 50 slides hidden in this photo, and a lot of them are in here and so on. You can go watch several Prezis. We've done, actually this webinar, I think you guys, was done last year. We did it, so you can go find this in the webinar resources to see how Prezi works, okay? So in conclusion, and before we answer, I think Jonah might have a few questions. If you have any questions, feel free to write them on the chat box in the right. But we really were trying to conquer a few challenges and give you some tools, some advice and some technology that we use. We don't currently have distribution agreements in place for any LMS or Panopto or any lecture recording software. We've just been talking to a lot of clients about using this sort of software for them to use internally, frankly, to improve their knowledge capture and improve their training processes. So the learning management system and then ILT interactivity is super important. We have a lot of people that attend our courses that immediately, we have a lot of trainers that we train, they go out and buy tablet PCs because they see how our instructors do it and how incredibly nice it is to have annotation ability. I'm doing this right in PowerPoint. You can certainly, there's a software called Windows Journal Notes that is very robust annotation software that our instructors use. So, and you did notice, I mean, we showed you kind of how we use it for client-facing products like our rigging engineering e-learning program and our intermediate advanced rigging, how we utilize VILT and on-demand. So this webinar is a form, obviously, of VILT training. So that's all we have today. I'm going to ask Jonah to come in, and if we have any questions to go over, we certainly can. And if anybody hasn't typed in their question yet, feel free to do so. But what I'll do while I'm waiting for that, and a couple of people asked about this, is I want to show you a little bit about our rigging engineering program and how it's delivered. So here's the program highlights. It's over 250 hours. We have some incredible instructors from Bechtel and Fluor and Mahmoud and so on involved. But like I mentioned, the format utilizes Panopto. So I think if we scroll down here, we'll see Panopto kind of in action with, but basically what you do is you import a PowerPoint, into Panopto, and then it documents or builds a table of contents, which you probably didn't notice as we were going through the presentations in Panopto today, but it builds an outline so the student can literally go in and click where they want to jump to any slide, and they'll jump there with the video, right? Because as the person's speaking, it bookmarks what slide they're on, obviously, and this is the slide, and here's before and after slides. So that's that. One thing you can certainly learn about Panopto is at panopto.com, and they have a myriad of case studies. One thing they've really done well with their website from a marketing point of view is they built an immense amount of case studies and video recordings to show people how they're using it. Okay, so another thing we are doing with some customers, however, is we're giving them access to our Panopto system. So if you don't want to manage Panopto or buy it, it's about, I think, $10,000 to $15,000 a year, depending on how many users you get. But if you don't want to buy it, we actually are creating folders for clients for them to capture their own videos. And what's nice about that is, again, we can help manage it. We can also add videos to that system, and then they're creating videos that we are that are outside of our realm. Really, they can create training in there for anything that they wish. So I got a couple of questions here I want to answer, and if you need to go, we want to respect your time, and you are completely excused if you'd like to go. Otherwise, we're going to answer a couple of questions, and I'll open up my journal notes here so I can annotate if I need to. If I can find it, there we go. Can you go into detail about interactive options when it comes to e-learning? Absolutely. I'm not sure I can answer or know everything else. If you want to keep commenting if I'm not answering it, but interactive options when it comes to e-learning, we touched on them at the end. We certainly utilize surveys and polls are really important to utilize depending on your class size. And this is, I'm going to touch on VILT first. So this is live VILT type of stuff. And Christina, please chime in if I miss anything. But polls and surveys, the other thing we really try and do, like I said, is annotation. This is a software called Journal Notes. I can do a lot of different annotation things in here, and so you can pull in any sort of file. So you can, Journal Notes in itself is, I think it's just called Journal at this point, but Journal, I can pull in images, PDFs, any file type really, and comment and annotate over it. What we were doing before was we were pulling in, importing the student workbook for the onboarding training, and I was literally answering the questions and writing my answers for the students. So I'm answering, it's just like an instructor going through a problem on a screen and showing a student how to solve it, right? That's kind of the general idea. So those are a few interactive options to e-learning. Yeah, if Christine, yeah.
And another thing that we've done with on-demand e-learning as well, you can include quizzes and games and things. We've built some of those into some of our theory-based training for rigging, as well as we've included quizzes in different parts where they have to interact and actually think and answer, and that requires a little effort on their part, which helps to keep them engaged.
Yeah, great point. And we actually, it's interesting, we've done that with the rigging engineering program. We've actually asked during a PowerPoint, a lot of the engineers during their PowerPoints, they'll get to a slide and they'll literally just say, okay, pause, take this problem. So here's an example problem that they've written out on the slide, and they'll verbally tell the listener, pause the video and solve this problem. And once you're ready, click play, and I will solve it for you as well. You know, so you're giving them a chance. It's a great way to take a live quiz, if you will, right in front of the instructor, and during a recorded video. You know, so it's good comment. Last question looks like we have is if there's any advice to share on how to keep up on top of new technology updates, websites for facilitating learning and collaborating. There are so many options these days, it's hard to keep up. I completely agree with you. We know that ITI, we have an advantage. We are in the training business, right? So we have to keep up on technology. We typically we have a lot of people that are really passionate about learning, so we just created environments internally. We utilize a CRM called Salesforce.com, and many of you probably heard of it, but what we have in there are different groups. So they're collaboration groups, just like you actually can use LinkedIn for the same thing. On LinkedIn, there's several groups, and you can go, I'm sure you can go find 50 groups right now on training professionals, you know, training pros, or e-learning. We actually have a group ourselves called e-learning for cranes, rigging, and lifting. I'm writing very quickly, I apologize. A couple other websites I try and stay involved with. There's one, I think, called trainingindustry.com. And if that takes you to a lousy website, I apologize, that's not the right website. But I just start bookmarking different training technology websites or magazines and trade. It's really getting into the trade. You have to treat, if you're in the corporate training world, you sort of need to, in a training management role, right, you need to treat yourself and educate yourself as if you are a senior or 12th grade, I hate saying it this way, but a 12th grade calculus instructor, at the local high school. If you take that mindset on, you'll go find a lot of resources and be able to stay up to speed more so on the technology and what's available. But that is one of the main reasons I got to say that we put on this webinar. So if you need to help resolve some training obstacles and want to know about the latest and greatest stuff, feel free to give us an email or a phone call and we can help you answer that. So looks like we hit about our time. I don't think there's any other questions that came in, but I really want to just say thank you to all who came today. This is definitely a different type of webinar than usual. Most of our webinars are very technical regarding cranes and rigging, and Mike, our CEO and technical director, typically does those. Actually, matter of fact, you can go to the Showcase webinar resources at any time from our webinars page, and you can download and view all the recordings and download all the webinar content. So last month we had a crane rigging brain teasers. We talked about load distribution, ground bearing pressure. This is much more technical training than what we went over today. But I just appreciate you all coming for the change of pace a little bit. We'll get back to more technical stuff next month. But feel free to give us a call or email if we can help answer any other questions. So thank you all very much.